may be seated. It also sounds like there's a song in the heart of the church. We're going to study a parable from Matthew chapter 25. Parable of the talents. The passage there that is printed on your handout sheet, if you don't have one of those, you'll want to get a copy. It's got 5 paragraphs in the passage of Scripture from Matthew 25. And I would like to have 5 volunteer readers, one for each of the paragraphs as we start. Somebody to start reading verse 14. Just stand, read loudly, and we'll move to the next volunteer.
For the kingdom of heaven is like a man traveling a far country, who called his own servants and delivered his goods to them. And to one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each according to his own ability. And immediately he went on a journey. Then he who had received the 5 talents went and traded with them, and made another 5 talents. And likewise he who had received 2 gave 2 more also. But he who had received 1 went and dug in the ground, and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants came and settled accounts with them.
Thank you. Second volunteer.
So he who had received 5 talents came and brought 5 other talents, saying, Lord, you delivered to me 5 talents. Look, I've gained 5 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You were faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord.
Thank you.
Also, you want to do that?
Okay. Go ahead.
He also, who had received 2 talents, came and said, Lord, you delivered to me 2 talents. Look, I've gained 2 more talents besides them. His Lord said to him, Well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful over a few things. I'll make you ruler over many things. Enter into the joy of your Lord.
Thank you. Third volunteer, verse 24.
Then he who had received the 1 talent came and said, Lord, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you have not sown, and gathering where you have not scattered seed. And I was afraid, and went and hid your talent in the ground. Look, there you have what is yours.
Thank you. Fourth volunteer, verse 26.
But his Lord answered and said to him, You wicked and lazy servant, you knew that I reaped where I had not sown, and gathered where I had not scattered seed. So you ought to have deposited my money with the banker, and at my coming I would have received back my own and interest. So take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents.
For to everyone who has, more will be given, and he will have abundance. But from him who does not have, even what he has will be taken away. And cast the unprofitable servant into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.
Thank you very much. What has God placed in your hand? That's the question we want to be thinking about. And he gave this parable to the disciples. I want us to figure out what's the context of this parable. Now, you can look around you and see 2 or 3 neighbors that are nearby. It's not going to be Easley up here talking for the next few moments. It's going to be you in a group of 2 or 3, maybe 4 of you pulled together. What's the context of this passage? Who are the people? Where are these people? What are the themes? And with regard to themes, I want you to make a note. Two things I really want you to look for in these themes. What stories did Jesus tell? And what lectures? What's the subject of the lectures that he gave? You can start all the way back to the end of chapter 20. That's the context that I would like for us to look at. Okay? You're going to have to talk fast. You're going to have to look quick. Open your Bibles to the context of Matthew 25. Pull nearby somebody that's got a Bible. Time's up. Let me pull us back to focus to the whole group, the context. What did you see? If you go all the way back to chapter 20, middle part of chapter 20, come forward. Who are the people involved in this passage? Quickly. Jesus, the disciples, anyone else? Okay. The Jewish leaders, the Pharisees. What's the context, the location? Where are they? Mount of Olives, Jerusalem, Judea. Okay. The when would be, this is during the Passion Week. The chapter 21 actually is the triumphal entry. We know that was on the Sunday before crucifixion. So here you get now a feel for when this story is given. It's in that last week of Jesus' life before his crucifixion. What are some of the stories that he tells? And I don't mean the kind of thing that the kid comes in and mom says, "Look, Jacob, you're telling a story." A parable. I'm sorry, Dr. Lumen, what was your response? Okay, the bridesmaids waiting for the wedding, that's one of the stories. Obviously, the story that we're studying here, the talents.
Well, you have the sort of variation on that of the servant who's put in charge of the other servant and beats up on him and gets drunk. And the master comes back and there's weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth.
Okay. Is that the one in chapter 21 or 20?
24.
Okay.
Isn't this more directed to the disciples? Because at the beginning of 24, from the beginning of 24, the Pharisees aren't around. So I think this is more directed to the disciples themselves than to the Jesus and exegesis class. That's the Pharisees.
Go further back. Go further back to chapter 20 and some other stories that he was telling. There are some other parables that he gave. I want to be sure we get those on our radar screen. Okay, the owner of the vineyard and the two sons that he sent to work in the vineyard. And that story is followed by what story? The farmers who are in charge of the field and they've sent. Okay. Then the next story is the great feast, the wedding dinner. And what's the
Weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth.
okay? You're seeing that theme going through.
There's the recurrence of the fruitless fig tree.
Okay. 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 Good. Do you get that insight? As we see this context, it's somebody that everybody's got a job, or there's an invitation, and there's a consequence if you don't fulfill the job or accept the invitation. Be prepared. Okay. Good. Let's come to the text. Great insights. Do you see the value of just pausing for a moment and backing up and looking at the context? Now, the sequel of the context is what? We're not talking about that, but it's
The anointing and the Last Supper.
yeah. And then Jesus dies and the crucifixion and all of that. The text. Okay, back to your group. Here are some questions. Just real briefly, see if you can put down a single answer for those. But I really want you to focus in on that last one. What does success mean in this story? But look at all of the questions. Go back. You got about 5 or 6, 7 minutes. Okay, just another minute or two. Through? Have you gotten far enough along we can turn our attention back here? Did you get another song at the end? There are 4 primary characters in this story. What do we know about the first one, the master? I can actually identify 5 qualities or 5 characteristics. Let's see what characteristics you can name. See how closely they match my list of 5. He was a hard man. Okay.
How do you know he was a hard man? That's the evaluation of the unfaithful servant.
Tell them that perception is much a part of reality is what's really real.
He then responds in the affirmative. He says, "You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I have no seed."
Yeah, but he takes it on the basis of his own terms and responds to it. But I would be careful to say he was a hard man. Because of the guy who says it in the parable.
Okay, what's another quality? Trusting.
He was a giving man. I mean, 75 pounds of gold.
Okay. Okay. What's the quality there? If he's expecting a return, what quality is it that causes us to expect a return? Can we say ambitious? I mean, it could have been. I started to write down greed. You know, it could be.
I don't think we need to whitewash the guy. This is a parable.
Okay, he's a hard man. He's a hard, greedy man. Okay, what else could we say about the man? What qualities do we see? Doris, does that, when you say he had expectations, that can you see how his ambition would cause for us to have those expectations? Okay. Judgmental. Okay. Is judgmental the best word to use there? Decisive. Okay. What other qualities do you see? Sean? Gracious. Okay. Right. Okay. Any other qualities? Here's the list that I wrote down. He was wealthy. He was demanding. He was ambitious. I see that he was discerning. He discerned some differences among the servants, and he was trusting. What do we know about servant number 1?
He was also rewarding.
Okay.
He definitely paid off to those guys.
Okay. He was rewarding. Okay. Now, if he were to come walking in here today, we'd say, is this the guy Jesus was talking about? Well, let's see if we can describe the first servant very quickly. What can we deduce about his qualities from the passage? He's a go-getter. Okay. Lots of ability. He was go-getter. What? Responsible. He may have been greedy, or he may have been afraid. If I don't put this to work, that guy is going to pin me to the wall when he comes back. So he's motivated. Okay. Let's change that to he was motivated. Yeah. Okay. He was loyal. Okay. Do you want to put that one down? I hear some.
Put that under motivated too.
Okay. Okay.
That's true for both the first two.
Yeah. And that's a key concept, folks. What does he put in your hands? These guys were risk takers. Okay. Anything that we would say about the second servant that would be different from the first servant? Okay, maybe some less ability. Okay. In fact, we would, based on what Jesus said, we would need to argue that he definitely did have less ability. Right? Okay. So he was less able, maybe less of a go-getter. Maybe he was all of these, but just a little bit less. What do we know about the third servant? Okay, he was fearful, lazy. Do we know that? Okay. How do we know who said fearful? How do we know he was fearful? He said, "I was afraid." So.
We're okay with fearful. It's just lazy. That's the problem.
Right. Okay. Okay. Okay.
Well, in that case, he's wicked too.
Okay. And he's unemployed. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, what else do we know about this servant? Okay. He played it safe. He was not a risk taker. Yeah, right. Right. A risk in the opposite direction. Okay. We can call that a negative risk.
I think it's helpful to recognize that in terms of being fearful and not taking risks and playing safe, that he's motivated as well. Motivation works in many different directions. He's motivated by fear of what would happen if he lost.
Self-protection.
Okay. Real quickly, what do these talents represent? Or what is a talent? Money? Okay. Not ability. Correct? In the parable. Okay.
This is an example of the influence of the English Bible on the English language. Our use of talent as ability comes from this story.
Really?
Oxford English Dictionary. Yeah. This is
Okay, interesting. And it's, I wasn't aware of that. But I have been aware that we've often have looked at this to say God has given me a lot of talents, and we equate those as abilities. But it's very clear in this passage that Jesus gave these talents to the servant, or the master gave them to the servant on the basis of the abilities they had. And in a moment we'll talk about what did the talent represent. I don't want to get to that yet. Just real quickly, why were the first two servants successful? Is that a no-brainer? That's 100. That's 100%. Why though were they successful? They tried. They used what they were given. They used it wisely. Could we say they were probably successful because they took a risk? They were willing to fail?
Isn't it safer just to say they used what they had? That was clearly known from the parable. They used what God gave them. The opportunities came their way.
Okay. To sum it all up, they used what they had. They used their abilities. They used the opportunity that was around them. They used the resources that the master had given them.
I guess my question would be in terms of the risk. I mean, if it's according to their ability, how much risk did they use if they were given an amount according to their ability? Is it that much of a risk, or is it just highlighting the fact that the third servant didn't use the ability that he had already, that he was given according to?
Good question. Do we know that?
Well, I mean, he didn't use his ability based on fear, but the others, based on something, did use their ability that they had already had.
It's interesting what the master says to him. You wouldn't have had to go too much to the risk the other guy did. We're told that the first one traded. Well, in trade, there is the risk of 100% loss. But he says, you should have at least put it in the bank.
Do the least amount.
And I would have had interest.
And you did less than that.
Yes. That it was not merely playing it safe. You could have played it safe, put it in the bank, where there's some risk, but not anything like the risk that the first guy ran.
Okay, what does success mean in this story? Now, I guess I'm thinking of wanting a definition of for us, and maybe this is an application question, but what does success mean if we'd say, okay, was the first servant successful? Would say yes. Was the second servant successful? We'd say yes. Was the third servant successful? We'd say no. What does success mean?
Giving the master a return on his investment.
Okay. That's one way of saying it. Success, giving the master a return on his investment. Anybody want to add another meaning? Let me ask this. What would have happened had the master come back and the third servant would have come to the master and he said, Master, I've got an empty bag. It did have 75 pounds of gold in it. But I took this bag of money and I invested it. And just right after that happened, the stock market went down, the economy turned bad, we went into a recession, and I have no money. 20th century, yeah.
American century.
Yeah.
Fund our money.
Question. What would the master have done? Go to hell. You lost my money. No? Would he have called him successful? Parable doesn't really say. I'm asking us in a larger sense, what does success mean? Okay.
It's also not about the abilities that they already had as well.
Yeah, he says, put his money to work. Put his talent to work.
Okay. Okay, so here's the talent, and put it to work and get a return. The definition before us is success is that it's the return on the king's investment, or the returns on that belongs to the king.
Context is important. It might not be a mistake. The next story is after.
Final judgment. So I guess I would push us to say, does the meaning of success focus on this or that? On neither? Okay. But I would see our faithfulness in our effort. Okay? Putting to work, investing. And if we lose it, we shouldn't push this parable that far, is the quiet word from our Old Testament professor.
I don't think we ought to make it say more than it says. I think that's a reasonable implication
Right.
in the rest of Scripture, in the light of the rest
Yeah.
of Scripture. But this parable
Certainly, this parable is not. I agree that this parable is not doing that. That's why I said earlier, in the success in the larger sense of application for us. How do we see that? Let's quickly move to this application. Just a small group as a whole. What do the talents represent? If they're not abilities, what are they? What God has given us. Everything He's given us? Okay, then the question, what are some particular examples of talents? To use the term talent within the meaning of this parable, let's be particular with you. Let's bear some testimony. What is a talent that as you're understanding who you are, as you're understanding this passage, what's a talent God has given you? Let's have several. Just speak up. And
Well, I think Matt's point is a very good one. That the next one that comes up is, did you give food to the hungry? Did you give drink to the thirsty? We've got stuff in our hands to give away, and that is an investment for our master.
okay. So we all have resources, both in terms of money and time. Are we giving it away? Okay. Someone want to pick up a specific? You'd say, this is my talent. This is my specific, as I see what my role in God's kingdom is. This is what He's put in my hands, on my shoulder to be doing. Anyone? counseling. Okay. Okay. Judy, down at Lakeshore Church, I've known you 15 years or so, and you've been an excellent teacher. That's a talent, God, not an ability, but it's an assignment. It's a responsibility. It's an assignment. And are we faithful in carrying that out? Okay.
Our children in our godly way, to care for other family members in a way that reflects the love and grace of Christ.
When I was 19 years old, I had finished my first year of college in Arkansas, and I was studying civil engineering. And that summer I had spent helping an older brother in Indiana, and had opportunity to really reflect on where was I going in my life and what was life all about. And I began to feel God talking to me in various ways about a change of direction. And in the middle part of August of that year, this was in 1970. Some of you weren't even born then. And I was praying one morning. It was 2 weeks before school was to start. I have to go back to Arkansas Tech. And I said, God, I just really need to know, what do you want me to be about? And it was before I went to work that day with my brothers and my dad building a house for a friend. And as I was praying, I was out on the property where my parents lived, and just in my mind, I became conscious of Matthew 25:25. That was the reference that just came to my mind. I didn't know the verse. I just thought Matthew 25:25. Well, later, when I finished praying, I went back home and I got my Bible and opened up. And here was the third servant saying to the king, I was afraid. I went and I hid it. And my immediate reaction was, God, I don't want to be afraid to do what you've been nudging me to do all summer. And so I told my parents, God's called me to preach. And they were happy about that. And so I went to Bible college, and for probably 15 years, I never told anybody that story. But it's been amazing to me that in the last 10 years, and more particularly in the last 5 years, even last night at 7 o'clock, I was sitting at my desk just ready to hit the submit key to send an email to the Crediting Association with a 24-page petition that sets the direction of an online program. And I thought of this parable. I said, Lord, I don't want to be afraid to do what you've asked us to do. Will we fail in what we try? We may, but I think if we're faithful to execute those responsibilities that he puts in our hands, those things that he lays on our shoulders, those opportunities that are around us, let's be like the first and the second servant. Say, God, I'm going to be faithful to carry forward what you've asked me to be about and to do. Thank you for your study together. I trust that your heart has been drawn to God in this time. Let's close with a song. David will come and play. Brian will lead.